They called her Ghost at the academy. Quiet, unremarkable, forgettable. For 4 years at West Point, nobody thought twice about Cadet Rachel Martinez. She was just another face in the crowd, struggling to keep up, barely making the cut. Her classmates laughed, her instructors shook their heads, and everyone assumed she'd wash out before graduation day. Until the moment the general stepped onto that stage and revealed her true rank. 15,000 people rose to their feet in stunned silence. The ghost they had ignored for 4 years was actually Major Rachel Martinez, Special Operations, and her mission was finally complete. What city are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for more incredible military stories that will leave you speechless. The morning alarm cut through the gray dawn at West Point Military Academy like a knife through silence. Cadet 4th Class Rachel Martinez rolled out of her narrow bunk at exactly 5:30 a.m., just like she had every morning for the past 8 months. Her movements were precise, economical, unremarkable, exactly what her mission required. As she pulled on her standard-issue gray uniform and prepared for morning formation, nobody in her barracks suspected that they were watching one of the most experienced combat veterans in the entire academy methodically conceal her true capabilities. Rachel Martinez appeared to be everything that West Point traditionally struggled with. She was from Phoenix, Arizona, where her father supposedly drove delivery trucks and her mother worked retail. Her high school grades had been adequate, but not impressive. Her athletic abilities seemed marginal at best. Her SAT scores qualified her for admission, but suggested no particular academic brilliance. Most troubling for her instructors, she displayed none of the natural leadership qualities that West Point sought to identify and develop in future Army officers. What none of her classmates knew was that the woman they called Ghost was actually Major Rachel Blackwood, a decorated Special Operations officer with 6 years of active duty service and multiple combat deployments. She possessed advanced degrees in military strategy and counterterrorism from institutions that most cadets had never heard of. She spoke 3 languages fluently and had completed specialized training programs that appeared in no official military curriculum accessible to cadets. More significantly, Major Blackwood had volunteered for an experimental program called Gray Shadow, designed to test whether elite personnel could maintain deep cover identities for extended periods in high-scrutiny environments. Her mission at West Point was unprecedented in its complexity and duration. Spend 4 complete years as an apparently mediocre cadet while gathering intelligence about academy security procedures and testing the limits of long-term identity deception. The cover identity had been constructed with extraordinary attention to detail. Rachel Martinez's background was supported by fabricated records going back to elementary school. Her parents were actually retired military personnel working as program contractors who had spent months rehearsing their roles as working-class civilians. Even her physical appearance had been subtly altered through minor cosmetic procedures that made her look younger and less physically imposing than her actual military bearing would suggest. But the psychological challenge was the most demanding aspect of the mission. Rachel had to genuinely inhabit her cover identity during every interaction while maintaining awareness of her true capabilities and mission objectives. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting, requiring constant mental discipline to avoid behavioral inconsistencies that might expose the deception. During her plebe year, Rachel's performance was exactly what the mission required: competent but uninspiring. Her academic grades hovered around C+ in most subjects, with occasional B grades where complete mediocrity might attract unwanted attention. Her military performance during training exercises was adequate, but showed no signs of advanced tactical knowledge. Her physical fitness scores consistently met minimum requirements without exceeding them significantly. The reaction from peers and instructors was precisely what the program had hoped to achieve. Rachel was categorized as a marginal cadet who would probably graduate but was unlikely to distinguish herself. She received no special attention, was never selected for competitive programs, and was generally overlooked when opportunities were distributed. Her roommate, Cadet Jennifer Walsh from Connecticut, whose father was a colonel, treated Rachel with polite indifference. "Martinez is nice enough," Walsh would tell other cadets, "but she's not really West Point material. I don't think she understands what she's gotten herself into here." Other cadets shared similar assessments. Squad leader Michael Thompson wrote in his evaluation that Rachel was reliable, but lacks initiative and confidence necessary for effective military leadership. Sarah Kim noted she was cooperative and hardworking, but doesn't contribute creative ideas or demonstrate strategic thinking. Faculty evaluations were equally dismissive. Professor Williams wrote that Rachel demonstrates adequate understanding of basic concepts, but shows no evidence of analytical thinking or intellectual curiosity. Colonel Patterson observed she meets minimum standards but displays no aptitude for innovative problem-solving under pressure. By the end of her plebe year, Rachel had successfully established herself as exactly the kind of cadet that West Point barely noticed. Competent enough to avoid remedial attention, unremarkable enough to avoid recognition, forgettable enough to blend completely into the background. But maintaining this deception required extraordinary discipline. Rachel's actual military experience gave her knowledge she had to consciously suppress during every training exercise and classroom discussion. When instructors explained basic concepts she had applied in combat for years, she had to feign appropriate confusion. When tactical problems were presented that she could solve immediately, she had to work through them slowly and sometimes reach incorrect conclusions. The physical challenges were equally demanding. Rachel's actual fitness level far exceeded what she demonstrated during PT tests. She had to carefully calibrate her performance to meet standards without revealing the advanced conditioning she had developed during special operations training. During combat skills instruction, she had to pretend to learn techniques she could perform better than most instructors. Most difficult were moments when her experience could have helped classmates or training scenarios, but revealing that knowledge would compromise her cover. During a field exercise, she watched a fellow cadet make a tactical error that would have resulted in casualties in real combat. Every instinct told her to intervene, but doing so would have revealed knowledge Cadet Martinez should not possess. The psychological strain was constant and cumulative. Rachel had to live every moment as a character she was portraying, never allowing her authentic personality to emerge even in private. She developed elaborate mental exercises to maintain her cover identity, including detailed backstories she could reference naturally during casual conversations. The loneliness was perhaps the most unexpected challenge. Despite being surrounded by classmates, Rachel could never form genuine friendships because every interaction was based on her false identity. She watched fellow cadets develop close bonds, while she remained isolated by operational security requirements. During her yearling year, Rachel's performance continued matching mission requirements. Her grades improved slightly to mostly B grades, with occasional A grades where dramatic improvement might be expected. Her military performance showed gradual development consistent with normal learning progression. Her fitness scores increased modestly, reflecting conditioning effects without suggesting superior abilities. Faculty and peer reactions remained consistent. She was recognized as adapting successfully to West Point, but unlikely to distinguish herself. She was assigned routine leadership positions that provided necessary experience, but carried no special prestige. Major Stevens noted, "Growing competence in basic tactical principles, but lacks intuitive understanding that characterizes future military leaders." Professor Martinez observed, "Adequate technical skills, but no indication of innovative thinking." Colonel Thompson noted she fulfills responsibilities reliably, but has not demonstrated initiative necessary for senior leadership. These evaluations were exactly what Gray Shadow had hoped to achieve. Rachel was performing her cover so effectively that experienced professionals were convinced she possessed only average capabilities. But the deception's success created psychological challenges. Rachel began experiencing moments of doubt about her actual abilities, wondering whether constant mediocrity performance was affecting her genuine skills. She developed elaborate private training routines to maintain real capabilities while ensuring no evidence would be visible to others. During holiday breaks, Rachel participated in intensive refresher training to prevent skill degradations. These sessions, conducted at classified facilities with instructors aware of her true identity, helped maintain special operations readiness while providing psychological relief from constant cover performance. By her cow year, Rachel had become so thoroughly identified with mediocrity that she was rarely considered for competitive opportunities. When selections were made for summer assignments, advanced courses, or leadership positions, her name was consistently overlooked in favor of cadets who had demonstrated superior performance. This invisibility was exactly what the mission required, but created unexpected emotional challenges for someone who had spent her career excelling and being recognized for exceptional performance. Rachel had to develop new psychological coping mechanisms for being consistently underestimated and overlooked. During a strategic planning exercise in military art and science, Rachel was presented with a scenario closely resembling actual operations she had participated in during her special operations career. She possessed detailed knowledge about tactical considerations and command decisions that would determine success or failure. But revealing this knowledge would immediately expose her cover. Instead, she worked through the problem slowly, occasionally reaching suboptimal conclusions consistent with her supposed experience level. She watched other cadets struggle with concepts she understood intuitively while pretending to share their confusion. Lieutenant Colonel Adams noted that Rachel approaches complex problems systematically but lacks strategic vision necessary for high-level military planning. This assessment was completely inaccurate, but perfectly aligned with her cover objectives. Her classmates continued regarding her as reliable but uninspiring. Thompson noted she was someone you could count on to do her job, but not someone you'd look to for creative solutions. Kim observed she was consistent and dependable, but just doesn't have that spark that makes great officers. These assessments were particularly ironic, given that Rachel's actual career had been built on precisely the creative problem-solving and bold leadership her classmates believed she lacked. But her cover identity's success meant even intelligent observers who interacted with her daily remained convinced of her ordinariness. During her first year, as graduation approached and classmates focused on future assignments, Rachel faced additional challenges of maintaining cover while preparing for the mission's conclusion. Her actual experience made her uniquely qualified for the most demanding assignments, but revealing this would expose the 4-year deception. Instead, she expressed appropriate interest in specialties matching her supposed capabilities. She applied for logistics and administration positions representing realistic goals for someone with her demonstrated performance. Major Patterson counseled her about career expectations based on her academy record. "Martinez, you've done well here. You've met all requirements, but you need to be realistic about your trajectory. Your performance has been solid, but not exceptional. Focus on assignments where reliability is valued more than innovation." Rachel accepted this guidance while internally noting the irony of receiving career advice from an officer whose actual experience was far less extensive than her own. Colonel Stevens suggested she consider military intelligence or signal corps, where her methodical approach would be an asset. Major Williams recommended transportation or quartermaster, where attention to detail was crucial. None realized they were offering advice to someone who had already achieved more in special operations than most accomplish during entire careers. Rachel accepted recommendations while privately preparing to return to operational units where her real capabilities would be recognized and utilized again. The final months presented unique challenges as Gray Shadow prepared for the dramatic revelation during graduation. The experiment was scheduled to conclude publicly, providing both fitting end to the deception and valuable intelligence about how such revelations would be received. Rachel worked with coordinators to plan the sequence transforming her from Ghost Martinez into Major Blackwood. The logistics were complex, involving multiple military units, media management, and security arrangements to protect classified program aspects. But emotional preparation was even more challenging. After 4 years as Rachel Martinez, returning to her authentic identity created unexpected anxiety. She had become so accustomed to hiding capabilities and accepting underestimation that she wondered whether she could readjust to environments where her real abilities were expected and demanded. Dr. Williams, the program's senior psychologist, monitored her mental state during final weeks. "How are you feeling about the upcoming revelation?" she asked during regular sessions. By her cow year, Rachel had become so thoroughly identified with mediocrity that she was rarely considered for competitive opportunities. When selections were made for summer assignments, advanced courses, or leadership positions, her name was consistently overlooked in favor of cadets who had demonstrated superior performance. This invisibility was exactly what the mission required, but created unexpected emotional challenges for someone who had spent her career excelling and being recognized for exceptional performance. Rachel had to develop new psychological coping mechanisms for being consistently underestimated and overlooked. During a strategic planning exercise in military art and science, Rachel was presented with a scenario closely resembling actual operations she had participated in during her special operations career. She possessed detailed knowledge about tactical considerations and command decisions that would determine success or failure. But revealing this knowledge would immediately expose her cover. Instead, she worked through the problem slowly, occasionally reaching suboptimal conclusions consistent with her supposed experience level. She watched other cadets struggle with concepts she understood intuitively while pretending to share their confusion. Lieutenant Colonel Adams noted that Rachel approaches complex problems systematically but lacks strategic vision necessary for high-level military planning. This assessment was completely inaccurate, but perfectly aligned with her cover objectives. Her classmates continued regarding her as reliable but uninspiring. Thompson noted she was someone you could count on to do her job, but not someone you'd look to for creative solutions. Kim observed she was consistent and dependable, but just doesn't have that spark that makes great officers. These assessments were particularly ironic, given that Rachel's actual career had been built on precisely the creative problem-solving and bold leadership her classmates believed she lacked. But her cover identity's success meant even intelligent observers who interacted with her daily remained convinced of her ordinariness. During her first year, as graduation approached and classmates focused on future assignments, Rachel faced additional challenges of maintaining cover while preparing for the mission's conclusion. Her actual experience made her uniquely qualified for the most demanding assignments, but revealing this would expose the 4-year deception. Instead, she expressed appropriate interest in specialties matching her supposed capabilities. She applied for logistics and administration positions representing realistic goals for someone with her demonstrated performance. Major Patterson counseled her about career expectations based on her academy record. "Martinez, you've done well here. You've met all requirements, but you need to be realistic about your trajectory. Your performance has been solid, but not exceptional. Focus on assignments where reliability is valued more than innovation." Rachel accepted this guidance while internally noting the irony of receiving career advice from an officer whose actual experience was far less extensive than her own. Colonel Stevens suggested she consider military intelligence or signal corps, where her methodical approach would be an asset. Major Williams recommended transportation or quartermaster, where attention to detail was crucial. None realized they were offering advice to someone who had already achieved more in special operations than most accomplish during entire careers. Rachel accepted recommendations while privately preparing to return to operational units where her real capabilities would be recognized and utilized again. The final months presented unique challenges as Gray Shadow prepared for the dramatic revelation during graduation. The experiment was scheduled to conclude publicly, providing both fitting end to the deception and valuable intelligence about how such revelations would be received. Rachel worked with coordinators to plan the sequence transforming her from Ghost Martinez into Major Blackwood. The logistics were complex, involving multiple military units, media management, and security arrangements to protect classified program aspects. But emotional preparation was even more challenging. After 4 years as Rachel Martinez, returning to her authentic identity created unexpected anxiety. She had become so accustomed to hiding capabilities and accepting underestimation that she wondered whether she could readjust to environments where her real abilities were expected and demanded. Dr. Williams, the program's senior psychologist, monitored her mental state during final weeks. "How are you feeling about the upcoming revelation?" she asked during regular sessions. "Nervous," Rachel admitted. "I've been pretending to be someone else for so long that I sometimes forget who I really am. The idea of suddenly being myself again is both exciting and terrifying." "That's completely normal, given your assignment's unprecedented nature. You've maintained one of the longest and most complex cover identities in military history. Some adjustment period is expected." As graduation day approached, final elements were implemented. General Harrison, who would announce Rachel's true identity, arrived for coordination meetings. Media arrangements were finalized to ensure appropriate coverage without compromising classified aspects. Security measures were implemented to protect Rachel and program personnel during expected chaos following the announcement. Rachel's classmates remained unaware that their unremarkable colleague was about to be revealed as one of the most experienced officers in their class. They continued treating her with polite indifference, that had characterized interactions throughout their 4 years. Walsh made casual conversation about post-graduation plans during their final week. "I'm excited about Fort Campbell. The 101st has such a great reputation. What about you, Rachel? Looking forward to your logistics assignment?" Rachel smiled appropriately. "I think it'll be a good match for my skills. I've always been detail-oriented, so managing supply chains should work well." "That makes sense. You've always been more of a behind-the-scenes person. The Army needs people who can handle unglamorous but important work." The conversation was typical of hundreds Rachel had experienced. Her classmates had formed fixed impressions based on 4 years of constructed deception, seeing no reason to question those assessments. But in days, everything they thought they knew about Rachel Martinez would be revealed as elaborate fiction designed to test human deception limits and assumptions people make based on limited observation. Graduation morning arrived with characteristic Hudson Valley spring clarity. Rachel woke before her alarm, as she had every morning for 4 years, beginning the familiar preparation routine. But this morning carried special significance as the last time she would perform these actions as Cadet Martinez. Her uniform was prepared with meticulous attention that had characterized every aspect of her cover identity. Every button polished perfectly, every crease pressed to regulation sharpness. But beneath the familiar uniform, Rachel carried knowledge that in hours she would be standing before 15,000 people as Major Blackwood, revealing capabilities that would shock everyone who had known her as the unremarkable Ghost. The ceremony began with traditional parade activities, marking such events for over 2 centuries. Rachel marched with her company across the plain, maintaining perfect alignment while internally preparing for the transformation moment. Her parents, who had played working-class civilian roles with remarkable commitment, watched from stands with genuine pride and anticipation. They alone, among 15,000 spectators, knew what would be revealed. As the ceremony progressed through familiar speeches and recognitions, Rachel maintained composed demeanor that had characterized her entire West Point experience. She showed no nervousness that might alert classmates to the approaching dramatic revelation. The moment arrived during what appeared to be routine administrative announcement. General Harrison stepped to the podium, requesting attention for a special recognition that has been 4 years in the making. "Ladies and gentlemen," the general's voice carried clearly, "you are about to witness the conclusion of one of the most remarkable experiments in military education history." Curiosity murmurs rippled through the crowd as people tried to understand what experiment might be announced during graduation. 4 years ago, this academy became testing ground for a program designed to evaluate whether elite military personnel could maintain deep cover identities for extended periods in high-scrutiny environments. The murmur grew louder as audiences began realizing something extraordinary was about to be revealed. One member of this graduating class has been participating throughout her entire time at West Point, concealing her true identity and military experience while successfully completing all graduation requirements. Rachel felt her heart rate increase as she realized her 4-year mission was reaching dramatic conclusion before 15,000 witnesses. "Cadet Rachel Martinez, please step forward." The stadium fell completely silent as Rachel broke ranks and marched alone across the field toward the stage. Her classmates watched in amazement, having no idea why the invisible Ghost was being singled out for special recognition. As Rachel approached, a side entrance opened and another figure entered. Colonel Davidson wore the distinctive Special Operations Command uniform, and even from distance many could recognize the bearing of an elite military officer. Colonel Davidson took the podium as Rachel reached the stage and stood at attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, The young woman you see before you is not Cadet Rachel Martinez from Phoenix, Arizona." The reaction was immediate and electric. 15,000 people collectively held their breath, preparing to learn the truth about the cadet they had been watching for 4 years. "She is Major Rachel Blackwood, United States Army Special Operations, with 6 years of active duty service and multiple combat deployments." The explosion of sound was unlike anything ever heard at a West Point graduation. 15,000 people rose simultaneously, not in applause, but stunned amazement. The collective gasp was audible, even over the sound system. Rachel's classmates stared in complete disbelief at the woman they had known as Ghost, suddenly learning she had been a field-grade officer with extensive combat experience throughout their entire academy time. Major Blackwood volunteered for an unprecedented assignment to assume completely fabricated identity and attend West Point as a regular cadet while concealing her advanced military training and operational experience. Colonel Davidson paused to allow the deception's magnitude to register. For 4 years, Major Blackwood maintained perfect operational security. Not a single person at this academy suspected her true identity. She successfully completed all requirements while deliberately performing well below her actual capabilities. Rachel remained at attention, her military bearing now clearly visible as she was revealed as one of the most experienced officers in the graduating class. The transformation from Ghost Martinez to Major Blackwood was stunning for everyone who had known her. This program was designed to test whether special operations personnel could maintain extended deep cover assignments in high scrutiny environments. Major Blackwood's success demonstrates such operations are possible even under the most challenging circumstances. Former instructors experienced mixtures of professional admiration and personal shock, realizing the student they had consistently underestimated was far more qualified than they were. Major Stevens suddenly understood why her students' answers had sometimes seemed surprisingly sophisticated despite overall mediocre performance. Colonel Patterson realized he had been offering career advice to someone whose achievements already exceeded his own. Walsh stared in open amazement at the woman she thought she had known intimately. Every conversation, every casual interaction was now revealed as a part of elaborate performance by a professional intelligence operative. Colonel Davidson gestured for Rachel to approach the microphone. For the first time in 4 years, she would speak publicly as herself, rather than as the character she had been portraying. "Major Blackwood, would you like to address your classmates and the audience?" Rachel took the microphone with hands showing none of the nervousness expected from someone experiencing such dramatic moment. When she spoke, her voice carried authority and confidence no one at West Point had ever heard from her. 4 years ago, I accepted one of the most challenging assignments of my military career. Not because it involved physical danger, but because it required hiding everything I had learned and achieved during my previous service. Her voice carried clearly as she continued, and for the first time, her classmates heard her speak with the competence and authority of an experienced professional officer. "I came to West Point as Major Blackwood, a special operations officer with combat experience and advanced training. But from the moment I walked through those gates, I had to become Rachel Martinez, an unremarkable cadet struggling to meet minimum standards." Rachel paused and looked directly at former classmates, many still staring in disbelief. "To my fellow cadets, I apologize for the deception, but not for the mission. Everything you learned about leadership, honor, and military excellence was genuine. The only false thing was my identity and apparent competence level." She turned to address the broader audience, including families and faculty, trying to process the revelation. This experiment was designed to test whether elite personnel could maintain cover identities for extended periods while operating in environments with intensive scrutiny. This mission's success will help prepare future special operations personnel for deep cover assignments where discovery could mean death. Her parents felt complex emotions realizing their own 4-year performance was also concluding. They had played their roles so convincingly that even they sometimes forgot the elaborate fiction they were maintaining. The most difficult aspect wasn't meeting academic or military standards required for graduation. It was watching exceptional future officers develop their capabilities while being forced to hide my own experience and knowledge. It was being consistently underestimated when I knew I could contribute more. It was living a carefully constructed lie every day while being surrounded by people dedicated to truth and integrity. She looked back at Colonel Davidson before continuing with her most personal reflection on the 4-year experience. But this mission taught me valuable lessons about humility, about the potential that exists in every person, regardless of appearances, and about the dangers of making assumptions about others based on limited observations. Rachel turned to face her classmates one final time as Major Blackwood, rather than the ghost they had known. To those who called me Ghost for 4 years, you were more accurate than you knew. I was indeed a ghost, hiding in plain sight among some of the finest future officers in the United States Army. But now my cover mission is complete, and I can finally reveal who I really am and what I'm actually capable of achieving. She handed the microphone back and returned to attention. Colonel Davidson concluded this unprecedented moment. Major Blackwood will now return to her operational unit to continue her special operations career. Her 4-year assignment has provided invaluable intelligence about long-term deep cover operations that will benefit the military's most sensitive missions for years to come. Colonel Davidson surveyed the stunned audience before delivering concluding remarks. But before Major Blackwood returns to her unit, she will participate in one final West Point tradition. She will take the oath of office alongside her classmates, not as a cadet being commissioned for the first time, but as a field-grade officer reaffirming her commitment to the United States Army and the Constitution she has already served with distinction in combat. The traditional oath took on unprecedented meaning as Rachel raised her right hand alongside her classmates. While they were becoming officers for the first time, she was publicly reaffirming an oath first taken 6 years earlier and already honored in combat situations her classmates could not yet imagine. I, Rachel Blackwood, having been appointed a major in the Army of the United States, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. As the ceremony concluded, Rachel found herself surrounded by classmates, faculty, and family struggling to process what they had witnessed. The revelation had transformed their understanding not just of Rachel, but of the assumptions they made about people based on limited observations. Thompson, who had been her squad leader during plebe year, approached with obvious embarrassment. "Ma'am, I owe you a significant apology. If I had known—" Rachel smiled and extended her hand. "You don't owe me anything, Thompson. You were doing exactly what you were supposed to do as a squad leader. My job was to blend in and appear unremarkable, and your treatment of me confirmed I was succeeding." Walsh shook her head in amazement. 4 years we lived in the same room, and I never suspected. How did you do it?" "Very carefully," Rachel replied, "and with a lot of help from people who knew about the program, but couldn't tell you." As the crowd dispersed and families prepared for graduation celebrations, Colonel Davidson approached Rachel for a private conversation. "Major, you've successfully completed one of the most challenging assignments in Special Operations history. Your performance has been exemplary, and the intelligence you've gathered will be invaluable for future missions." "Thank you, ma'am. It's been an honor to serve in this capacity. Your next assignment will be briefed next week, but your experience here has made you uniquely qualified for very sensitive operations. Are you ready to return to full operational status?" Rachel looked around the stadium one last time, taking in the scene of classmates celebrating with families, the Gothic architecture of West Point's buildings, and the Hudson River flowing past the academy where she had spent 4 years living a carefully constructed lie. "Yes, ma'am. I'm ready." As evening fell over West Point and graduation ceremonies concluded, Rachel stood on the plain where she had marched countless times as a cadet. Her classmates had departed for celebrations, their understanding of the past 4 years forever changed by discovery of Ghost's true identity. Rachel was no longer Cadet Martinez from Phoenix. She was Major Blackwood, Special Operations, preparing to return to a world where her true capabilities would not only be recognized, but essential for mission success. The 4-year experiment was complete, and both she and the Army had learned valuable lessons about the possibilities and limitations of long-term deep cover operations. But as she prepared to leave West Point for the final time, Rachel realized the experience had changed her in ways that would extend far beyond her special operations career. She had learned humility from being consistently underestimated. She had developed patience from spending 4 years suppressing her natural abilities. Most importantly, she had gained deep appreciation for the dedication and potential of every soldier, regardless of their apparent rank or abilities. The quiet cadet who had been dismissed as Ghost for 4 years was returning to active duty as one of the Army's most experienced and capable officers. But she would carry with her the lessons learned from a unique mission that had required her to hide her strengths, accept underestimation, and find purpose in appearing unremarkable. Major Rachel Blackwood was ready to return to the shadows where Special Operations personnel do their most important work. But she would never forget the 4 years she spent as Ghost Martinez, learning to hide in plain sight among America's future military leaders. The experiment was complete. The mission was accomplished, and one of the Army's most elite officers was ready to apply lessons learned from 4 years of invisibility to future operations, where being unseen and underestimated would mean the difference between mission success and failure. What did you think of Rachel's incredible story? Have you ever been underestimated like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing military stories that reveal the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary.